Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review Amazon's new original film that they bought up from Paramount. Big budget to release on the 4th of July weekend is The Tomorrow War. And this is from director Chris McKay, who previously worked on Robot Chicken, the Lego Batman movie. Will be making the second Lego Batman movie, and now The Tomorrow War. And this focuses on a man played by Chris Pratt who is who's drafted into the fight against aliens in the future, and they're sent through a time this time tunnel into the 30 years into the future, and he's put to work and makes some connections along the way unexpectedly and fights for the future of humanity on planet Earth from these creepy white strange tentacled wolfhound looking weird thingies. They're aliens. That's the most important thing. They're not from Earth. This war is not against humanity. And this film from McKay, it balances there's some more serious moments. There's definitely some silly moments. There's a decent amount of comic relief in the film, which I'll talk about. But overall, this film, it's one of those kinds of don't take this too seriously, and the action ranges from a particular sequence in a office, this tall skyscraper office building, through the tunnel and the stairwell. Incredible. Building a tension, intensity, framing of the action, incorporating the special effects of these creatures, which is really, really well done. There's definitely some moments where it's they show bigger, broader cities on flame. And I promise I won't make that same Blue Oyster Cult joke that I made in my the Forever Purge video. But this film, its effects are relatively good, and you have this score. This score from a protege of Hans Zimmer who worked on The Dark Knight. We have Lorne Balfe. And this score is so overbearing and just boisterously Hans Zimmer-y that at times it did feel like a bit much. But it was triumphant, it was big. This film is 3/4 exposition, and there's a moment where it's you find out that Chris Pratt's drafted, and little spoiler, they tell him, hey, you're gonna die in 7 years. And my first reaction was it seems like they're recruiting people that, they aren't going to be around in the future because they die before the 30-year mark. And I'm okay, that makes sense to me. They didn't have to spell it out for me. I'm okay, I appreciate it. And then the very next scene, Sam Richardson and Chris Pratt are having a conversation and spelling it all out for us. I'm oh, I spoke too soon. And that exposition gets really tiring after a while. And there's in general, I think they do a relatively good job with the time logic, but there's some things that don't entirely make sense, and also some of the choices that some of these characters make don't make a whole lot of sense, and in particular what Chris Pratt does in trying to save a particular person in the future, and you could have done so many different things, but you're doing this very specific thing because you need to save this person, even though if you doing what you do in the past works, you're going to save them anyway. So I don't get what the whole big deal is in terms of these character choices. And we have the setup of the characters where these characters are all set up, and you have this group that are all brought on in the same time as Chris Pratt, and there's some fun additions here, but for a good third or so of the movie, they're completely sidelined and disappeared, and there's some characters that go in and out of the film that don't really have a whole lot of sense of belonging and importance at times. There's definitely some stiff, awkward dialogue. Some of it's just so on the nose and bland and blah, that you're just oh, you gotta be kidding me. That's the best that you can do, and that's disappointing, especially when you have somebody like Chris Pratt, who brings a lot of energy and fun to roles. He's sharp, comedically. I do have to say there's a couple of dramatic moments that didn't necessarily feel the greatest, and from his performance, so there's definitely some times where he falls a little flat, which is sad because it's Chris Pratt. but it's the truth, and it felt a little awkward. You have Yvonne Stravosky, who's this colonel, like this general in the future that Chris Pratt winds up working with, and they have an interesting dynamic that is a big part of the narrative of this film, and it's an interesting thing, and I feel like that relationship really works between them, and there's an emotional anchor, even though it does at one particular time jump the shark to being how obnoxiously over the top and dramatic this one particular scene is between Pratt and Stravosky. Then you have Sam Richardson, who's a ton of fun as the supporting character, but there's also some supporting characters like Betty Gilpin and some others, Mary Lynn Redscrub and Mike Mitchell, who are fun, and they kind of just feel like afterthoughts at some point. But you do have J.K. Simmons, who like pops up for like 2 minutes in the first like 2/3 of this movie. I'm like, that better not be the only J.K. Simmons that I get. You'll have to watch the film to find out if I was let down or not. But along with all of these like flaws and everything, there's big fun action in it. The actors are really strong in it, but in the end, it's just too big, bloated at 2 hours and 18 minutes. And awkwardly structured at times, this film feels like a lot more fun than it has quality-wise. And in the end, I feel like this is a silly fun time, especially like the climactic battle at the end of the film gets really silly and over the top and ridiculous. That it's kind of like, is this supposed to be a parody? Is this supposed to be serious? We'll have to find out moving forward. But in general, I would recommend this film. But those are my thoughts on The Tomorrow War. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.